Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Psych Club, from Top of Your Game, my new YouTube channel, but Psych Club, my main one, and News with Tom Numbers on my locals channel. I've got the magnificent Gene Decode. Gene, how are you, sir? It's great to have you back on the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you.
We got to do a wonderful prayer broadcast a few weeks ago that went around the globe, and that was fantastic. And now we're very close to Christmas. And before we get going, Gene, how can we'll put your link, but how can people find you? What's the best way for people to find you? Can you hear me, Gene?
Yes, my social media is on Rumble. Well, that's not social media, but still the same. On Rumble, I'm Real Gene Decode. On Truth Social and Telegram, and I think Twitter now even, Real Gene Decode. And then I have my website, which is genedecode.org, and there's a paid site where you can go look at all kinds of things there, decodes and different things I do. I'm currently working on another dumb update and another Hollow Earth series one. That'll be, I've lost track, I think number 5. And that's on Deep Dives, which is $7 a month or $77 a year.
Fantastic. And 7 in the numbers. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, the order of the alphabet. 77, that number comes to the word Christ. So that's appropriate right now. And hertz, as in frequency. So hertz is also 77, power 77, Christ 77. So I'd encourage everybody to go to Gene's website and sign up and get all of his brilliant content there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's, amazing that I picked that number that way. I picked it because, of course, God created everything in 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested. So the 7's a number that represents finished. And so when you look at sound, for example, you have in the scale we use 7 notes, and then on the 8th note you doubled the frequency. You've gone up 1 octave. The frequency is now doubled. So it's a doubling in frequency. And then, of course, I use 77 because it's means that if you were to do 7 times 12 months a year, you'd be $84. So I'm giving people $7 off of a year price. In other words, it's as if they get 1 month for free.
Yes.
And you have the double 7. So it's still, 77, 77,
That's it, 777, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On my locals channel, I have a community there, and people join, and I started off on $50. It's at $88. 88's Trump, but I've taken $38 off, which is gold, which is balance, which is change. So it's at $50 right now, but it'll go back up after Christmas. But I like looking at the prices for the numbers, Gene. So it's interesting you've chosen those numbers. And when you talk about sound, so obviously there's music. Music comes to 65 in the numbers, and the word 7 comes to 65. So it's interesting that you brought up the thing about sound and the notes and the octaves, and it's like, okay, yeah, music is 65, which equals 7. Which is 65. 15 is 65 as well, which is interesting. But 7 is 65, yeah. Of
course, in submarines, you're extremely concerned about sound. So, because that's how you remain undetected, is you're, silent and deep. So you run silent, run deep. You rig for, ultra silence, quiet running, and you get as quiet as you possibly can. So how to keep the submarine quiet, how to pick up another submarine, the physics of sound in the water, how sound moves through different mediums. You know the speed of sound. You're able to calculate distance based on a return of a sound. All of those things. How the depth gauge works is it sends what we call a ping, or like a and it goes to the bottom of the ocean, and it bounces off the bottom of the ocean, comes back, and you know by the time that if you divide that time and you know the speed of the water in water of sound, then you know how long that took to get down there. So you know the depth of the water, which coming into port is extremely important. Or if you're my first submarine, we used to bottom the ship out in the Bay of Tonkin, so that you would want to know precisely where the bottom is. So you have all of these different things you need to learn about water. Like you need to learn Snell's law, which is the bending of whether it's light or sound. It's still essentially the same formula. So you can figure out based on distance, time, speed of through the medium, all of those things, how the sound moves and how it bends. So when one of the things with flat Earth, if you look, they say it's not round, it's flat. But if you look at what some of the things are saying, that they're based on this or this or this, you should be seeing that. And it's just a trick of the light bending, like a refraction of light on the road. Doesn't meet up with Snell's law. So if you look at Snell's law, it violates the law of Snell. So, if you don't know that physics is sound, which I always have to teach the new officers coming on board, I was always trying to teach them. I had one officer, I was like, what did you get your degree in? Underwater basket weaving? You don't seem to know much of anything. You didn't know calculus, you didn't know physics, you didn't know algebra. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to start at like elementary school level, really early elementary school level with this person. I love classical music. He didn't know Beethoven. He swore Beethoven only had 5 symphonies. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because, my favorite is the 9th, the Ode to Joy. And, it's just like, and I like the Erica Symphony, number 8. I like number 7. Number 6 is really beautiful. It was in Fantasia, parts of it. And so, there's lots of different things I really love in classical music. He didn't know that. He didn't know physics. He didn't know algebra. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we learn a lot about the physics of sound and how, and you have to learn physics basically overall. And then you also have to, when you, the first time is the hardest. When you get on submarines, you have to qualify, especially on a diesel submarine, which was my first one. You have to qualify, be able to run every system on the ship. So you have to know it comes in groups per month. So like 1 month you're learning the hydraulics. You have, main hydraulics, external hydraulics for all the hydraulics that penetrate the hull, and all these different hydraulic systems. Next month you're using water systems. All of these different things you're learning, and you have to be able to draw the system as it runs through the entire ship, explain where everything goes, what every valve is. And you actually have to be able to run every single system on the ship. So it's a very demanding. It takes about a year for the first time, and then after that, which I always did, every submarine was a different class. So if you go to a new submarine and it's the same class, you don't have to requalify if it's not within a certain period. But if you go to a new class of submarine, you have to qualify on that submarine. So I've qualified 5 times, and it's endless, because once you qualify basically on the submarine, you have to qualify in your watch station. You have to qualify, as you get rank as a diving officer, chief of the watch, all of these different things, quartermaster, all of these different things you have to qualify. I qualified nuclear weapons safety officer, all kinds of things. It's like, it's like we used to say, you want to get the cure for insomnia. Read the nuclear weapons safety manual. You have to read it standing up, walking back and forth, because you stop to read and standing up, you'll fall asleep. It's so boring. It's like, oh my God. That's where, that movie, I was laughing when I got out, that movie where it was, I forgot, it was with the guy that was on Saturday Night Live, or not Saturday Night Live.
John Travolta.
John Travolta. Saturday Night Fever. I even got it wrong. You got it well done. And he was in that movie. I think it was Bit Sword or yeah, something like that. But that's one of the terms in the nuclear weapon safety manual for, you know, a nuclear weapon being in some way compromised. So there's different levels of, you know, how they get compromised and what the term is. And so, you know, it's interesting, but, you know, when I hear people talk, you know, people email me and they say, I knew you were at submarines. I could tell because of the way certain things you say, you can't fake it. There's little tiny things that a person that's been in the Navy and submarines says that you know if it's for real or not. You can't sit there, you know, I get emails and I have a troll, like, you know, we all have these trolls. Yeah, right, Gene's a general. I never said I was a general. I was in the Navy. We don't have generals in the Navy. You know? So, it's kind of funny, but, you know, the trolls don't even have it right. You know? So thank you, Tom.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome, Gene. Thank you. Some things popped into my mind as you were sharing that and talking about sound. So in the numbers, the word sound comes to 73, and also the word number also comes to 73, and the word Egypt also comes to 73. And something my viewers are familiar with, and you and me have mentioned briefly C60. I asked you about it very briefly. We didn't really discuss it, but I mentioned it on a conversation with you a few weeks ago. But so I'm a fan of shungite and orgonite. 103 shungite, orgonite 103 together comes to 206, comes to quantum physics. But one of the things that they have is pyramid. So I wanted to maybe ask you about pyramids, and because people talk about the pyramids being almost impossible to create right now. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But I've also heard the thing of pyramids were created through frequency and sound. And it's interesting that the word sound, 73, comes to number also 73. There was a TV show here in England years ago called Number 73, so they were telling us. But the word Egypt is 73, and the 42 degree angle, 42, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they say about 42 being maybe the answer, a number to the universe. But I wonder if you've got any thoughts and commentary on the pyramids and how they were actually created, Gene. And I'm assuming, I feel there's some kind of connection to sound, and I'm just wondering if you might be able to tell us the truth of the pyramids. You know, how did they get there? How were they created? What's the deal with it, you know?
There's all kinds of things that they use, slaves and copper tools. You can't use an inferior grade tool to cut something that has a superior hardness to it. So you look at the table of hardness of elemental, which is, you know, diamond being the hardest, talc being the softest. The girls, I remember it by the girls can flirt and other queer things can do. Each letter of the first of the word is one of the minerals that is that number of hardness from 1 to 10. T being talc, which is 1. G, the girl, being gypsum. Can being calcite, etc., all the way up to, you know, can flirt and other queer things can do. D being diamond, can being corundum or a ruby. So as you look at the table of hardness of things, you can't use copper to cut the stone that is in the pyramid, especially when you get to the inner part of the chamber of the king and things like that. You've got stone that has a very high hardness level. You're not going to cut that, but you're completely right in that they use sound. They didn't use it to levitate. Sound, the word of God, is what created the universe. Everything from the word came the light that then dropped down the densities. And as it got more, the density got more and more, you know, deep in vibration. In other words, the vibration lowered, lower and lower and lower. So in other words, a deeper sound. It took on form. It's what we call form or matter. And so that's exactly how it's going to sound insane to people. They created them from the top down. They were built by creating sound waves that materialized the stone from one place to another in just debris. And they were literally formed, transported and formed in place. That's why if you look at the top of the pyramid compared to dead, perfectly on center, it's like, I think it's 1/10 of an inch or something like that off center. But if you look at how accurate that means, you have to lay the foundational stones of the first row. They're being laid within microns of accuracy. We do not have that kind of technology to lay stones that size, that accurate to this day. Not only that, if you look at the pyramid in its proportions, there's phi represented in it to, I think it's 600 digits of accuracy. There's pi represented to 600 digits of accuracy. So, based on the perimeter of the base, the height of the pyramid, and then there's something called the apothem, which is from where the capstone would have been on top, which was solid gold at the time. And then the sides were polished white limestone. It was just, blinding in the sunlight. One pyramid was white, one pyramid was green, and one pyramid, I think it was black or red, depending on your timeline. It was either black or red. And they lay on the banks of the Nile. You could pull up a boat and literally walk off the boat and be at the base of the pyramid at the time. The Nile has changed its course. And of course, they're laid out in the configuration of the belt of Orion. The apothem from the tip of the top down to the middle of the side. And the pyramid is actually 8-sided because that apothem, on the apothem, the sides are folded in on the apothem line on each of the sides. So if you look from space and you catch a shadow on it, it actually is an 8-sided pyramid. It doesn't have 4 sides, it has 8 sides. And with the capstone installed, it's actually a device that is a stargate, as well as it can be an ascension tool. And there's actually underneath it another pyramid upside down underneath the Giza plateau that people don't realize that's even there. Then that's connected to tunnels that run the entire, and a ship that is 1 mile in diameter lies underneath that, deep under, at the tip of the pyramid that's upside down. There's a huge ship that's materialized underneath there, and there's tunnels that go all the way to, for example, to Romania, to Bochegi mountain, and they go all the way to Shambhala, to the entrance to Shambhala in Tibet, which was shown in the movie New Horizon. So these vast tunnel networks that go all over the Middle East, all over the continent of Africa, all the way down. That's one entrance to the hollow earth, the middle of the earth. It's a vast and complicated complex, but the technology to create it is incredible. It's also, if you drew a line through where the pyramid of Giza, it's the one line on Earth that will pass through the most landmass of Earth that you could possibly do. It's also was during its time precisely located there based on where the sun was rising, such that also where the planet's star Sirius was rising, because it would capture it on the solstice, such that at noon you could see it in the middle of the day in the chamber of the king, coming down the entryway to the chamber of the king. So, I mean, all of these things. And then it also, the pyramid of Giza, there's pyramids all along the Nile River, the entire length of the river. So the Sphinx that's behind the pyramid, or depending on how you look at the pyramids, are behind the Sphinx. There's 2 persons that looked at the wear pattern on the Sphinx and said that, for one thing, it was up to its ears in water at one time. And another thing is that the pyramids were built after the Sphinx, because the wear pattern on the Sphinx is not from sand and wind. And it's from the flowing of water off the Giza plateau onto the haunches, or the backside of the Sphinx. And so shows that, and it can't do that now with the pyramid there. So the Sphinx is even older, but there's, based on the alignment of the Pyramid of the King opening to the planet, to the star system Sirius, the star, it doesn't do that today because the Earth is slowly rotating on its axis, and the alignment. I got a comment in one of my chats that say, or that I just had on the, in the chat, in the live chat, and it said, if the Earth is moving, how come the stars don't? They do. The star Polaris is the North Star. It hasn't always been, and it'll be Vega later on. They do move, and it's shown by the pyramid again, because the pyramids currently do not frame like that. And during the time the Sphinx was put there, if you stood on the haunches of the Sphinx and you look between the ears on the solstice, its ears would capture Leo, the constellation Leo, coming up directly middle between the ears. And all of the pyramids along the Nile line up and reflect the constellation Leo, where the stars would fall on Earth. So it's all so precisely done that it's way beyond what we can accomplish today. And you look at the domes we have, they do this. The domes in the US are on the constellation Orion and Gemini. In the US, they're Libra and Gemini. In Europe, they're Libra and Gemini. And different continents, they have different constellations that they've built the domes onto, because of the energy structure that creates and the flow of energy. And they do all of these things with energy based on physics and, of course, numbers and mathematics. Physics is all about numbers and how they interconnect and all of that. But it is interesting, you said 73 is the year I joined the Navy. That's interesting.
It's interesting as well that you were talking about it being about copper, saying that that's not hard enough, and stone. So I mentioned that sound is 73, number is 73. You just shared that that's when you joined the Navy in 1973. Egypt is 73. Copper that you mentioned is 73, and stone is also 73, which is very interesting. You talked about the Stargate. Stargate is 91, the father, Space Force, POTUS, dentist, and other things. But you also were talking about the 8 sides. First of all, I didn't get it when you said the pyramid is 8 sides, and I was like, hang on, where's the 8? But then when you talked about there's a mirror pyramid below, I was like, there's the 8 sides. Okay, so I've had this feeling for a while, and you could maybe enlighten me on this if you know anything about this, or if this is the case. So I have a feeling, and you talked about energy as well. You said it's all about the energy, and they do the domes and the tunnels. So energy in numbers is 74. Gematria is 74. Jesus is 74. Messiah is 74. Muhammad 74. English, the language you and I are speaking in, and most of probably the listeners are listening in. Obviously, there's others that aren't English and they're listening. But 74 is energy. 74 is gematria, the number sequence I use, but it's also London. I have a feeling, I don't have evidence of this, but I have a feeling that there could be something directly under Westminster, i.e. a pyramid of some description, or a dome, or something going on under there. And it's interesting you were talking about the places around the earth, well, in the US, and we're talking about Egypt with the pyramids. Is there anything under Westminster, River Thames, all that area? Has there been a pyramid or a ship or a dam or a spacecraft or something out of the ordinary under the center of London? I have a feeling there is, but I'm wondering if there's any knowledge, if you have any insight on that.
Westminster Abbey, there's a huge dome, and then there's tunnels that run through the underneath the subway systems for the maglevs. They use that as a cover, and they're building them anyway. You might as well be able to go underneath and build the networks for the domes all over the world that are interconnected by the maglevs. Westminster Abbey is actually where Trump went after the Queen capitulated to him and waved him in front, and he reviewed the troops. The troops weren't in review. He reviewed them. He walked by the troops, the British troops, the red, the red, red, big tall black hat, guys, and red jackets.
Yeah.
By himself. He was not accompanied. If you're reviewing the troops, that's how you do it. First, the first guy starts to walk in front of you, and then it switches out, and the guy that's taking over winds up finishing it, and he's the one in front in the U.S. military. Plus, during that time, only U.S. military music was playing. It wasn't like the British military songs are playing. Halls of Montezuma Marine song, To the Shores of Tripoli, etc. The Anchors Away for the Navy, Off We Go into the Wild Blue Yonder for the Air Force, etc. All of that. So it was recognizing that the United States was now in charge, not the corporation. The United States, the president of the United States Republic. So he then went to Westminster Abbey because London is one of the three city-states that the cabal uses to control the world, DC and the Vatican being the other. And he also went to the Vatican, and the Pope did the same thing. And then, of course, he's in DC, and he already took over. So when he went to Westminster Abbey, you see him signing a huge book. That book is actually the ledger for what's called the Crown Corporation. You see it in all the 007 movies. They call it the corporation. Like the CIA is called the company, because it's a company underneath the corporation, which is the part that protects the company in the British royalty system is, of course, the MIs, the MI5, 6, 7, etc. All of that's the protection wings and the intel and all of that. And the corporation is the Crown Corporation, which is in the US underneath the Pacior family, which was part of the French situation. And then they took over the entire thing as the CEO and the head of the Crown Corporation. But when Trench signed that ledger, it means he is now the CEO of the corporation, the Crown Corporation, the Crown Company that runs the world. It's why in 007 you always see in all those James Bond movies, they talk about the company. And in the series Shield, they're talking about the company, because this international group of banksters run the world through the company. And the company, you look at Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock being the three subsidiaries, the first layer of subsidiaries underneath the company. The company owns it on the top, all three of those subsidiaries. Those own all the other companies on Earth. All the major big companies on Earth are subsidiaries of the subsidiaries of BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. So people don't look at what's at the top. So it's the same thing with the pyramid. You look at the pyramid on top, the pyramid on the bottom. If you move it up to create a star tetrahedron, and you look at where the sides intersect in space, you get at the equator, in other words. That's where the chamber of the king is, and that's why it's called a pyramid. Pyra is fire in the middle of it. The fire in the middle of the chamber is where the energy focuses, the fire that the pyramid is bringing in from the sun inside the earth, the one underneath, and from the sun outside at the central sun of the entire universe. Is bringing those into the pyramid, the fire in the middle, or the chamber of the king. And so all of this is, based on physics and math, and all of the pyramids on Earth are all interconnected and laid out in the stars of the entire night sky that we look up and see, which, appear not to be moving. It's because, like, if you were to walk and look at a tree on the other side of the park, it slowly moves. But the trees near you, you pass them very quickly. They're moving quickly. The further away something is, your aspect on it, it changes slower and slower and slower. You're looking at stars that are billions, millions to billions of light years away. and the most distant stars, this galaxy hasn't been here, and this part of space hasn't been here long enough for the distant stars, light to at the speed of light, to have gotten here yet. They say the universe is over only so many billions of years old. It's actually just finishing its first duration, which is 17 trillion years. The Earth is the first planet that's in the location of where that duration completed. And so that's why we're part of it, keys into the entire cycle of the universe rotation. The entire universe is rotating too. It's turning very, very clockwise slowly. It takes 17 trillion years to make one complete revolution. And the Earth just happens to be the first planet and the first system to be at the location where that rotation has hit exactly its conclusion for the first duration of 17 trillion years, of which it'll exist for 7 total durations. That's how God works. And so it'll be 7 times 17, or if you multiply that out, you get, if I'm doing my math correct, just do the 7 times the 10 of the 17, that's 70, and the 7 times the 8, that's 56. You add the 70 and the 56, you get 120 years, if I'm doing that right. So 126 trillion years will be how long this universe exists. And then it's uncreated for 7 durations of longer length. Well, God, postulates what occurred, how it occurred, who was in it, what they did, how they did, to figure out, to consider, well, not figure out, consider how the next creation will be done. So there's 7 durations in between each one. It's just like people talk about past life, but that you have in between life. What were you doing between this one and the last one, which for most people wasn't a good thing. You were in a soul trap, and you were getting, all kinds of torture and lives that never even happened while you're in there, so that you meet somebody and you don't like them right off, or you don't trust them right off because you have a feeling not to, because it's actually a life you're remembering. It never really happened at all. It happened in the soul trap as a holographic life, in which they had a hologram of that person because they knew you'd be meeting them next time around. They wanted you to poison that person in your feelings right away. So they do terrible things. The holographic them does terrible things to you, and you don't like them when you meet them here. So they've been manipulating and playing us for a very, 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 very long time. And they're holding us down by the moon, which is another fascinating, you look at the distance from the center of the Earth to the center of the moon, and its relationship and its size and its relationship from us to the sun, and it's going into pi and phi and all of these things. Again, it's perfectly in orbit such that if you moved it in or out 100 miles, we wouldn't have eclipses. It has nearly a perfect circular orbit. No other moon in the entire Milky Way does that. It has a perfectly circular orbit. We don't perfectly circularly orbit the sun. We have an elliptical orbit. It's part of why we have seasons. It's not just the fact that the tilt of the Earth as we go around the sun. It also has to do with that as we get into summer, the Earth is getting closer to the sun. And so, the energy coming from the sun is thereby more intense. So it's, fascinating for me to all my life, I've studied these things from the time I could first read. I just never really got too much into sports at all. I just wanted to learn and read. And if I wasn't doing that, I'd be out rock climbing and skiing and backpacking and hiking and running and riding my bike and all of those kind of things. I used to ride my bike about 100 miles a day growing up. And I'd run 12 miles a day once I got into high school. I was on cross country. I lettered in that. And I just love it. I just get up in the mountains and run 14,000 foot peaks, and I just love climbing and getting up and looking out across, the beauty of God's creation, and just always love being out in nature. And, I would eat, by the time I was in high school, I'd have a friend just drop me somewhere and I would hike without trail. from point A to point B somewhere, and just for days and days by myself with my dog. I had a husky dog at that time too. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Gene. That sounds a beautiful activity. I'm loving the nature down here on the coast, and it's well, nature is God's creation, but it's inspiring. It's wonderful. Some of the things you mentioned, Ben, Gene, talking about Westminster Abbey. So Westminster Abbey was a focal point, a real key point for me in terms of discovering the numbers. And it was early lockdown, maybe the first or second week in, and I'm just trying to figure out what on earth's going on. And I didn't know about the numbers then. I'd had a number of experience when I met Ivanka Trump, but I hadn't connected the order of the alphabet with the numbers. But something was telling me to look up Diana's funeral service, which took place in Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey in numbers is 200, which is like a thief in the night. It's also Mount Rushmore. So there's two important places on the globe, Westminster Abbey, Mount Rushmore. There'll be others, I'm sure, with that value of 200. But I was looking at it and I realized from studying, anyone can do this on Wikipedia. I mean, I know Wikipedia can change, but this has been recorded as fact for a long time. So her funeral service started at 9:08 in the morning, which is kind of a wonky time. I'd have thought it'd be 9 o'clock or 9:15 or 9:20, maybe 9:30, or 9:20. 9:30 is probably more probable than 9:20, but 9:08 was kind of weird. And I was like, that's a code. And I didn't know about the alphabet and the numbers. I didn't know then, and I'm looking at it, and either later that night or the following day, I figured out, I was like, 9:08, 9:08, 9 plus 8, 17. Okay, I didn't know what Q was, didn't know what 17. And then within that same sort of period, I was like, okay, so 17, what's the 17th letter? And then I count out on my fingers. I'm having to do it on my fingers then. And I realized it was the 17th letter. And then shortly after that, something prompted me to look up what I thought at the time was JFK Jr. I looked up Arlington Cemetery and I saw the big Q, Eternal Flame, John F. Kennedy, Eternal Flame 243. The interesting thing about that is Diana passed away, in my opinion, witness protection on the 243rd day of the year, August 31st. August 31st comes to 261 in numbers. November 22nd for JFK comes to 261. Mission Impossible Mask comes to 261. The Project Looking Glass comes to 261. The United States of America comes to 261. There's a whole bunch of them. But she went 1997 on the 243rd day of the year. And 243 is John F. Kennedy, Eternal Flame. And you can see it's a Q. This is how much I knew back then, Gene. I actually thought it was Junior's. I thought it was John John's burial plot. I didn't realize he was even, scattered at sea. I think actually when I looked it up, it said John F. Kennedy Jr. Someone had mislabeled it. But anyway, being that as it is, Westminster, well, the city of Westminster is also 243, and Central Intelligence Agency is also 243. But yeah, Westminster Abbey, they've changed it now as well. So when the whole thing with the king, with Charles, with all that kind of malarkey went on a few months ago, a year ago, whenever it was, he wasn't. They changed the floor, so it's no longer the chessboard. It's not the Masonic chessboard anymore. That's kind of been changed. It's been dulled down. It's not there anymore. They've changed it. But you were talking earlier as well about the Sphinx. So the Sphinx in numbers comes to 1, 2, 3. Comes to Abraham Lincoln. Comes to Eric Trump. Comes to gold plus silver. 1, 2, 3. ABC 1, 2, 3. You got that thing with magic 1, 2, 3. But literally 50 yards away from the entrance of Westminster Abbey, there's Parliament Square, and Parliament Square is even closer to it, but Parliament Square, you've got Westminster Abbey here, you've got the River Thames here. River Thames is 138, Donald Trump. You've got Houses of Parliament 217, which is Mission Impossible, which is Lady Diana Frances Spencer. Across the way, you've got the Millennium Wheel, which is 175, which is Diana Frances Spencer. 175 is also Consciousness, and it's another one that you brought up during our discussion today. I think I've made a note of it. Let me look for a second. Don't think I have. It'll come back to me. But then you've got Parliament Square, and at the tip of, I guess it would be kind of the northern-ish tip, maybe at an angle, but at the opposite from where the Houses of Parliament are with Big Ben, you've got a monument, and there's a lot of different monuments around, but this is the most prominent one, and it's Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln is 123, which is also the Sphinx. And Abraham Lincoln is looking down, he's looking ahead at Houses of Parliament and the River Thames and the Millennium Wheel that looks like a Q from a certain angle. And over to the right of him is Westminster Abbey in the twinkling of an eye, Mount Rushmore 200. But he's looking down at a bus stop, and the bus stop has a number. In fact, it doesn't have a number, it's actually a letter, and it's the Q bus stop. And so I'm like, who's put that there? Someone's put that there. And I discovered that within the first few weeks of lockdown. And to add a little bit more flavour and fun to it, Gene, you have a bus that goes right around Parliament Square. And Parliament Square, the bus, one of the buses is the 88 bus, and 88 is Trump. But it goes right round the square, and it goes literally right past the Q bus stop. And the other thing about Parliament Square is in England, we've got this phrase, and I guess it's around the world, but particularly in England. Also, the other one you mentioned, so you've got 7 times 17. I had to do this, I had to check it, comes to 119. So 119 comes to the pyramid, and we've been talking about that. And 119 comes to redemption, and it also comes to Nikola Tesla, 119. But if you do, so the phrase in England is remember the 5th of November. So we've been told to remember it. And there's many important dates in the calendar, but there's only one that we're told to remember in our kind of folklore. Remember the 5th of November. And that comes to 355 in the numbers. And that also comes to, bear with me a second, it comes to Parliament Square, Westminster as well. So this grid, this point that I'm talking about with all the things around the board, Westminster Abbey over there, Abraham Lincoln, the Q bus stop, Houses of Parliament, River Thames, the Millennium Wheel. So Westminster, Parliament Square also comes to 355, and that's remember the 5th of November. And in the Q posts, we're told about the week to remember. And a week after November 5th is Remembrance Day, which is November 11th. So that's an exact week if you include November 5th. And it's like, remember the 5th of November, so it's starting there. And then we've been told that there's going to be a week to remember. And at the end of that week, perhaps November 11th, which is Remembrance Sunday. And we've all been told about this word, remember. And remember is 79, the dove. And Tesla was, associated with the dove. President Trump's been shown with a picture of the dove. Today, I discovered a picture of Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed in Harrods. And it says innocent victims. It's probably not a dove, it's a large bird. It looks kind of like a large seagull, but maybe it's a dove. I don't think it's an eagle, but it's a large bird over the two of them. But yeah, the whole thing I didn't know the Sphinx today just until you told me. But 123 Abraham Lincoln, and bringing up the whole thing of Westminster Abbey, it's literally 40, 50 yards away. And that's, and 165 is, in the good numbers, is resurrection. It's other physics, 165. Yeah, anyway, thank you, Gene.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Going back to the pyramid again, it even codes Euler's number, which is a very important number in physics, mathematics, calculus, etc., logarithms, all of that. Then if you were to expand the pyramid to where you took the base of the pyramid as the equator of the Earth and expand it till it goes to the center of the moon, it actually encodes the distances perfectly as well, so that the top of the pyramid would be at the center of the moon, and the distance is exactly such that if you expanded it so that it was from one side of the Earth to the other side of the Earth at the equator, the top of the pyramid now would be at this, if you put the moon touching the surface of the moon, touching the surface of the Earth, it would be from the center of the moon to the base would be at the equator of the Earth. And so it also equates the moon and the Earth, and it equates Euler's number as well. And then it also perfectly represents all the Platonic solids are encoded within the pyramid as well. Excuse me. So it also has, if you took 3 perfect circles inside the pyramid, those circles are 777 feet, 777 inches in diameter. So it's fascinating. You were talking about the sevens. The sevens are even in the pyramid as well. Then if you lay 2 pyramids, bottom to bottom, as the cross section of the pyramid's base, so they're laid like, turn them 90 degrees over, so the base is perpendicular to where it used to sit. The tips of the pyramids then would overlap that square. It's called circling the square, which is something that is incredibly hard in physics to figure out how to do that. And then draw a circle around the points, and you perfectly circled the square. So it's that's Mason's The Secret of Circling the Square and all of this. So the mathematics and the physics of it, it approximates pi to a very high level of accuracy, 99.998%. And then phi is 99.9999%. So it's, Euler's number's the same. So it does all of these things. And then pi times phi over, if you make the height 4 based on the cubits of it, which is the sine of 51.85 degrees, it's 99.94% accurate again. The constant Euler's number wasn't discovered until we learned more about phi. So it's fascinating to see how much the pyramid encodes the numbers within the pyramid, even go to what you were saying, the 7777777. So 777 feet, 777 inches from the apothem to the side compared to the height of 4, you get pi. So, and then you get pi times phi on the apothem at that point. So it's just absolutely fascinating to look at the mathematics and physics and numbers that go into the pyramid. It's just the accuracy of it is incredibly phenomenal. And then its alignment to the exact pointing, its alignment to the exact center of the Arctic pole, and its relation to that is off by a very small amount. But when it was built, it was not off at all, because the Earth is slowly rotating through the precession of the equinoxes. And so again, people say it was built this time. It couldn't have been built the time they're telling you, because that chamber of the king had to frame the dog star Sirius. It doesn't, and there's only certain time frames because of the rotation of the Earth on its axis. It has that 23-degree tilt, which causes it to wobble through the precession of the equinoxes, of 13 signs of the equinox. And so you can only have that at certain times. So at least the first time it has to be is 36,000 years old that it could have been built. Then you would have to go back a full precession again, a full time around. If it's not that one, you got to go further back by one full precession at the equinox. So, to get the precession of the equinox, all you have to do is know that the Earth rotates every 72 years, it rotates 1 degree. So if you multiply that out, you get the fact that the Earth rotates on its axis every 25,920 years. which means that you would have to add 25,922 or 920 to 36,000. So you would be at 61,920 years. So, you know, the time frame that the pyramid was built has to be within a certain tolerance of certain time frames based on that chamber entrance. And the mathematics of it are absolutely stunning. So thank you.
That's a long time. So building the pyramid from top down, you said it was like from material, and then it was built from the top down. Who did that, Gene? Who did that? Who built it?
A non-terrestrial group of which Akhenaten and his daughter Merititten were part of. That's their family line, their civilization that came here. They're the ones, the same civilization that helped to build that. And they were helping Atlantis, same civilization, with the power crystals to have free energy all over the entire Earth through the crystal grid network. And there's huge crystalline structures that are called apens, a deep underground network of crystalline structures. They found one in Mexico. You can see those huge, huge crystals in an extremely hot cave that's down there that are massive. And those crystalline structures are all over the Earth. They keep the Earth's frequency, just like you have structures of ley lines in your body called acupuncture meridians, which are actually now called Bangshan channels, because they were discovered to be, like I've been saying before, they were discovered to be fiber optics. Organic fiber optics conduct ultraviolet light from the pineal, which ultraviolet light will pass through the front of your skull, has little tiny holes like a honeycomb. It's unlike any other bone in the body. It's actually, if you take it from a cadaver and hold it up against the sun, you'll see little points of light coming through it, not like the top of your skull or the back of your skull or your femur or your tibia or your ulna or your any other bone in the body. You won't, if you cut it to the same thickness, you won't see that. But that means light, specifically infrared and ultraviolet, will penetrate the material of the brain all the way into the pineal, which sits exactly from the perineum to the very, the middle of the fontanelle at the top of your head that was soft when you were born. It passes straight through the pineal. And if you draw a point at the top of your ears through your head, and from the center between your eyebrows to the first vertebrae coming out from underneath your skull, you have a three-dimensional cross. And that center of that cross is the pineal. And so the pineal, if it's not calcified by fluorides, it will pick up light. It has rods and cones that are attached by nerves to the visual cortex of the brain. And so it picks up light coming through the glabella, which is the name for the area right between your eyebrows, and it goes into the pineal, and then it radiates through all of the channels of the meridians and the organs for the entire body, interconnecting them. And you have little tiny servers and you have major servers. And the light of that ultraviolet light is spinning in this bundle of fiber optics. They're a bundle of them. It's like a little tiny computer system that's keeping each in its 7 areas. One at your root chakra. They call it chakra, just means spinning wheel, because when you look at it energetically at the frequency of ultraviolet light, you see light spinning clockwise if you're healthy on the top half and counterclockwise on the bottom half of you, just creating a euphoric toroid, which at your center of your balance point of your body, which is at your dantian. So the first and second chakra, being the dantian, is the dividing point. The first chakra, it's going counterclockwise if you're healthy. When you start to get Parkinson's, for example, you see those are starting to line up going counterclockwise. The top and the bottom are starting to lock and they start to jitter. And that's when the person gets a lockup because their field is no longer correctly rotating. It's starting to get what is called the Metatron lockup, where it's completely locked. And then the person starts to get, their nerves start to not function right. They don't have enough of certain brain transmitters that are being made by the pineal, which is controlling the entire endocrine system through the pancreas and a couple other organs in the body. It's and the adrenals and those things. It's setting the entire neurotransmitters and all the endorphins in the entire body, along with the all of the the immune system then is set by that, and on and on. It's why when you don't get enough sunlight or you fluoridate the pineal, people get sleeping disorders, because it sets the diurnal, or the cycle of when the sun's up, because your third eye, which again, if you look at the distance of that, it's the same dimensions of the pyramid between your two eyes and the third eye. It's a little pyramid within your head. And so it's, we're created the same way, so you look at the proportions of everything. It's really, really fascinating to see how we're laid out in the same proportions of the people that built the pyramid, that knew what they're doing, of the 7 days of God's creation, the 3 aspects of God, the Christ, the Holy Spirit, the creation, the Holy Spirit, and God. You look at all of these different things and you see how we're literally created in the image. So you have 3 circulatory systems. You have the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system, and the chakra system, which has 7 main computer or transmit sections, and then you have little ones out throughout the body, like in the center of the palm of your hands is another one. So why Reiki masters use the palm of their hand. They're charging up that chakra. And there's martial arts techniques where you clap your hands 3 times and rub them together, and then you pull them apart, and you can concentrate the energy by a breathing method of circular breathing between the palms of your hands to facilitate healing or energy movements. Tai Chi masters get to the point where you can't even come running at them and get within 10 feet of them. They can bring their energy field up such that they can throw you away from them, and you don't even get 10 feet away. You can't close in. You're charging to throw a kick or a punch. You can't get in. There's actually a series of movies called a big, huge series of a bunch of black belt, Taekwondo black belts who went through China. It's called China's Living Treasures, and they showed some Tai Chi masters who have these Taekwondo black belts that are trying to charge them. And when they get 10 feet away, the guy just bounces his hand up and down, facing with that palm chakra at the person. And the person just kind of staggers and bounces backwards on his heels. He can't get close to the person because this energy field can be brought up. That is that ultraviolet wave frequency light that's coming, that's a barrier to being attacked. And so these are the kind of things that we were originally created. And then you look again at 8-8, you were talking about 8-8, which is times itself is 64, which is how many amino acids we are made out of in our body. And it was originally how many strands of genetic material you had and how many of those amino acids were used to carry information in those strands. We only use 2 pairs or 4 right now with only 2 strands. But we originally used 4 balls of 12 each with interconnecting strands. So we had 48 in the balls interconnected, along with strands between each of the balls, like those Chinese balls that are carved in jade, where one ball spins inside the next one with another one inside that one with another one inside that one. It's symbolic of the human body, just like when they opened up the huge, actually it was a different orientated, different mathematical representation, a low flat pyramid a guy uncovered that got all the terracotta statues that they found in China. Those were laid out in rows of 4, which was representing the DNA. Each one is unique and different. It represented the DNA structure of us, of humans. So that's what those terracotta statues were actually showing, that they were showing the human genome as it existed on Earth at the time they built that pyramid and put all those statues and all the other stuff that was down there. It's fascinating to watch we say that, we're at the pinnacle of knowledge right now, yet these ancients that built these pyramids in China, built the pyramid of Giza, built all this stuff, the humans that were here that were partaking with the groups that came to help them, they knew all this too. They were part of it. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Gene. What was the name of the group that built the pyramids again, please?
I didn't give it. But Akhenaten and his daughter, Meriteden, who Akhenaten was a really interesting pharaoh. He is the one that moved the capital of Egypt and said that they're not going to worship a plethora of gods. There's only one God. And of course, they were very, very upset, the priesthood, because they're, raking in the money for donations to the gods, which they would then go to temples and take all the donations, the food, the gifts to the gods instead of one God, one temple. It's much more, financially feasible, profitable to have many, many temples where people go to this God and that God and this God, and you go to the bottom of the statue of that God and supposed God, and you do this and this. It's all the same game they played on us for a very, very, very long time. So when Akhenaten died, his daughter Meriteden had to flee with her protectorate sisterhood, which is called the Sisterhood of the Amber. You know what amber is. And she went through the Mediterranean and first took rest in Andalusia. And then after a while, they figured out she was there. She had to go through the Straits of Gibraltar, and she went north up to a group of islands and settled in a place that, she changed her name in Andalusia to Scotta, Socotta, and she went up to a place that later got named after her, which became Scotta Land, where she landed her boats. And she met a guy named Arthur. So that's later, she changed her name again. When she married Arthur, she had changed her name in Scotta Land. So, back then people lived a very, very, very long time. And she lived a very long time and had a very interesting lifetime. And so we see these, ancient technologies and knowledge of math and science that we're only beginning to rediscover again.
Wow. Let me get the spellings of these if I could change. So Akhenaten, is that
Akhenaten. Akhenaten.
Can you spell that please for me?
Yes, I can. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. A-K.
Yeah.
H-E-N-E.
Sorry, Gene.
Yeah.
A-K.
A-K-H-E-N, like hen, like a chicken.
Yeah.
A-T, like at.
Yeah.
E-N.
Thank you. And the daughter's first name, so Meriteden, how please?
Yeah. M-E.
Oh, M-E, okay. Yeah.
M-E. I'm sorry, doing the T's as a kind of a D sound. It's kind of the way it is. I'm trying to get as close to the way it was said in Egypt during the time. T-A-T-E-N. Excuse me. Oh, I got it right. Yeah. M-E-R-I. Excuse me. M-E-R-I-T-A-T-E-N. Meriteden.
Sorry, Jamie. We'll do that again, but just slower. Sorry, I got a bit muddled there. So
Yeah, sure.
M-E.
M-E like me.
Mm-hmm.
R-I like rye.
Yeah.
T-A like ta. T-E-N like the number 10. 10. Meriteden.
Oh, Meritan. So there's, I'll read it out. M-E-R-I-T-A-N. Is that correct?
M-E-R-I-T-A-T-E-N.
T-A-N. Okay, I'll read that back to you. M-E-R-I-T-A-T-A-N. Is that correct?
Now T-E-N. 10, like the number 10.
T-N. Okay. I'm going to do that again back to you. So M-E-R-I-T-A-T-E-N.
Correct.
And then she changed her name to SCO. What was the rest, please?
SCOTTA, Scada.
Ah, SCADA. Okay. SCOTTA. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Well, you know what? There's some nice things that have popped up with that. So when you talked about the 64 amino acids, obviously 64 is 8 times 8, which you mentioned. The word Scotland comes to 88 in numbers. The capital city of Scotland comes to 88 in numbers. Tartaria comes to 88 in numbers. Romanov, if you spell it OFF instead of OV at the end, comes to 88. And Trump comes to 88 in numbers. And you mentioned Arthur. Arthur's 86, and Arthur comes to the word pyramid, 86. Highlander, also 86. And if you've seen the film Highlander, Gene, Highlander, part of it is set in ancient Scotland. Scotland's 88, but Highlander 86, Arthur 86, Pyramid 86. You mentioned Temple as well. Temple is 71, which is smart, which is Lady Diana, which is Psych, as in my channel. Orion is 71. And I was looking at the numbers on Chamber of the Kings. So you talked about the alignment of the pyramids and how it's fashioned after the belt of Orion. So Chamber of Kings, this is interesting. So Chamber is 50, which is America, which is Fight, which is Donald, Paul, Eileen, for my personal relations, my relatives that help me with the numbers that I've passed on. So Chamber of Kings, Kings is 60, which is diamond. You've probably got the tip of the diamond. I mean, diamonds look like tips of pyramids in some ways. And it's hard in the ability to cut stone, etc. But Chamber of Kings comes to 131, comes to John F. Kennedy, comes to solipsism, interesting enough, but it comes to Belt of Orion, which is 131. So Chamber of Kings comes to 131, and Belt of Orion comes to 131, which I think is interesting because of, the pyramids are lined up, the 3 in a row is after the Orion's belt of Orion, Chamber of Kings.
And you also have 3 little pyramids along the side, just like on the belt you have the scabbard, which are the Queen's pyramids. They're called. Perfectly represent the constellation Orion. Meritene was like 14th century BC, was in the 18th dynasty. As I said, her father was Akhenaten. It's thought she might have actually became a pharaoh under her own name. They changed her name. She was the wife of Smenkhare, which is Smenkhare. So Meritene is spelled that way from the translation of the hieroglyphics. Sometimes it's also spelled out Mery. So instead of M-E-R, it's M-E-R-Y instead of M-E-R-I, Meritene. But it's thought that she might have actually been a pharaoh for a while under her own name. She then took her name as a pharaoh. It's thought that she was the pharaoh, and I'm going to spell this. I'm not going to even try to say this. I don't speak Arabic. Ankhepere, whatever that is the first name, and the last name is Nefemeruaten. So Akhenaten was married to Nefertiti, and they had one of their 6 children they had was Meritene. So she has an amazing lifetime, and it's believed that one of the 4 arcs was created by her. So of the 4,
one of the 4
arcs. There's 4 arcs, not one, just not the Ark of the Covenant. There are 4 total.
Okay. It's funny when you were describing the pyramids earlier in the Chamber of Kings, and everything lining up, I was having images of Indiana Jones and just, you know, everything lighting up. So obviously the Ark of the Covenant is in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, they've actually discovered in Scotland the wreck of 2 Egyptian ships. This was discovered in the year 937 near Hull, if you know where that is. Hull. The radiocarbon dating of it goes back to the, goes back
Hull,
to
the city of Hull.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's northeast England, so that's not far from the Scottish border. Yeah, Hull. Yeah, Hull. Yeah,
That's where they found 2 Egyptian ships that were carbon dated to the right period of time that Scotta was supposed to have gone there. And it's, said that, she may be entombed in the Abbey of Incolm, Inchcolm. Incolm.
Lincoln, do you say?
No, inch, like take the, 12 inches in a foot, inch, and then, so INCH, and then COLM, Inchcolm Abbey in Scotland.
Inchcolm. Okay, I didn't know of that place.
I think she might actually be resting there.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. You know what's interesting about the whole thing of Edinburgh and Scotland? Well, Scotland being 88, Trump being 88, Edinburgh being 88, Romanoff, OFF, if you spell it that way, 88, Tartaria, 88, Purple, 88. You got the Lionsgate with 88, 64 with 8 times 8. Budapest in Hungary is 88. Copenhagen, Denmark is 88. Moscow, Russia is 88. California is 88. That's very interesting. But if you do Scotland, Edinburgh, so Scotland's 88, Edinburgh's 88, that comes to 176, which comes to Back to the Future, comes to November the 5th, comes to Level Playing Field, comes to Full Conclusion. I'm wondering, is there a correlation with Tartaria with this gene? Actually, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I wanted to ask one more question about the about Egypt. So I got the names from you of those people, and then it seems like you may have deliberately not said what group. So I thought that was the group, but you mentioned the man and his daughter, and I got the correct spellings of those. But then a kind of off-world group, if I've not misunderstood. Are we able to talk and say who that off-world group is or was?
No, I'm not at liberty to share that at this time, sorry.
Okay, I respect that. Okay, so Tartaria. What do we know about Tartaria? It seems like maybe these places around the globe that have their numbers 88, like Budapest and Moscow, Copenhagen, Edinburgh, they're all 88. Scotland's 88, Trump's 88, Romanoff is 88. Is there a connection between the Romanov dynasty and Tartaria and these capital cities that are still available to us, are still on the map, we still know of them, and they're numbers?
And you have a lot of churches, even in Portugal, for example, and in Madrid in Spain, you have some of the ancient Tartarian churches that are in Madrid. There's this church that pretty much penetrates everything else to the skyline. It goes way up there and the whole city is below it. And it has these huge towers. It's very obviously Tartarian. So, looking at the Madrid skyline and you can see it. It's sticks up above everything and it grabs your eye seriously. So it is really quite amazing to see these churches, and in those churches, they have, all of them are focused such that they resonate at 432 at a certain sweet spot. There's a certain chair where you sit, a pew where you would sit in the church. So if the choir or the organist playing, all of the sound will perfectly meet up at that spot and be tuned to 432. So they used to tune orchestras to that until the NAZIs had it changed to 440, which is dissonant to the human genome. It helps take you apart. That's in their point of view. And so in that, all of these churches not only have that construction throughout Europe, they're laid out on the constellations again. And then the stained glass windows are a technology we can't do. We don't know how to make that kind of glass anymore. It's a secret that has been lost. And they bring light in and change it into the colors of the complete rainbow. That is what human beings are finally getting back to seeing. It's why when they first started saying, how red the Red Sea would get sometimes with that algae that spreads out across it, is because they started seeing the color red again. For a long time, human beings had lost a lot of we couldn't even have our normal senses. We didn't have the ability to see the color red, so we didn't see it. It was a black tinge that spread across, and then our eyes got the ability to pick up red. The pineal can see ultraviolet and infrared, UVA, B, C, and D, and so it can see ultraviolet in all the spectrums of the ultraviolet, including the infrared all the way down to the far infrared. It's like what bees do. If you look at a flower, you can see, if you look in ultraviolet light, what look like landing lights going to where the pollen is. It's like, this way, there you go. When it's lit up by the ultraviolet light coming from the sun, these light up like markers on a runway for the bee to go in there. And so it's just seeing how God built everything. It's so phenomenal. You have a lot of things that are what are called irreducible complexity that shows it can't be evolution. We can't be created by evolution, because you have things like the eye, which parts of the eye, without all of the parts, it doesn't work. But there's no purpose for any one of the parts on their own anywhere in nature at all. The same thing with your blood clotting. It requires many, 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 many different molecules in the body there's many different ones. You can be a hemophiliac if you're missing any one of a huge long series of these, and meaning your blood won't clot. But in other words, any one of them are gone, you don't clot, you bleed to death. If you cut your finger with a piece of paper, you can't stop bleeding. And yet none of them, the majority of them, have no purpose other than that. So all of them, how did they all come together? It's like you have the flower with the landing lights. How did they develop that in coordination with the bee's eyesight? There's birds in the Amazon where their private parts look exactly like a certain fruit that they eat that falls from the up in the treetops down, and of course it's their food source. So then they're going to attract their mate by the same thing that means food to them. How did that happen? How do all of these really bizarre alignments in nature wind up happening to where they fit perfectly? You have things that one thing can't exist without the other, and yet they randomly, through mutation and millions of mutations, 12 million mutations, one of them is beneficial, only one. So if you look at that over the time it said that we were supposed to evolve, which threw away God completely. It was a death stab in the heart for God, because in understanding there's only one being that created everything, because you're saying that we evolved from slime or from a monkey or something. The amount of mutations to get from here to there is so vast that the time frame of humans evolving on Earth, the Earth hasn't been here long enough. It's not even possible, let alone the fact that the Earth hasn't been sitting in this orbit for that long. It used to be a moon of Tiamat, when Tiamat was between Mars and Jupiter before the war, in which the moon was used to break up Tiamat. It was part of the weapon of war that was stolen from the Andromedas. So, and then you look outside of our known, primary planet, just outside Pluto and Chidron, which are part of a planet that broke into two chunks and they rotate around each other. You have another destroyed planet that happened in the first flood, which was the destruction of all life on Earth, including all the way down to a prion. I mean, everything was gone except the whales inside the magma whales, and the entire Earth flooded again. That was the first one. This is, they said that the Earth which it did. It cooled, but they said it just cooled. I mean, it just cooled. It just decided to get cooler and get some land. And so it's actually, as the magma is creating, volcanism. And so it's creating a combination of hydrogen and oxygen, creating water to rain down on it and cool it. And as it starts to form a plate, you have plates that were formed, partially formed, and that's the only way you know how old the Earth is by rock. You can date rock. You can't date the magma. So the Earth is actually 6.7. They don't tell you that's when it first coalesced. Is about 48% the size of it is now. And then it's been accruing material from space in the hundreds of tons a year, plus plants as they came onto Earth, started to create cold nuclear energy and create the material they're made from. They would take it up from the soil and reprint it and recreate it. And that's what they're made out of. So they're adding hundreds of tons as well. So the Earth has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, about 4.7 billion years ago, the entire surface of the Earth was solid. But they say that there was nothing till 4.3 billion, nothing at all. No. I mean, really, there's land, and for 0.4 billion years, 400 million years, there's nothing alive at all. Nothing at all. That's not how life works. Louis T. Montagnier got life in a little vial in 2 days using sound and light. And it was life. All that was in there was sand and distilled water. You're talking silicon, hydrogen, oxygen, and you got life. You got carbon and nitrogen and all the elements in life. Where did they come from? They're coming from the light and the word, which is the vibration, and the light, which creates life. That's how life comes every single time. And what he got were little single-celled animals and plants that don't yet exist on Earth. That's why they're seeing new species. They're always about how we're losing all the species. They never tell you they're finding brand new species that they never knew because they never existed. There's new species of flowers, for example, up in the Rockies. They've recently found 2 new species of an Indian paintbrush that never existed. And yet they've known that the Indian paintbrush, genus, species, all of that, for 100 years plus, more than that. They completely genomed everything. They knew everything about it. Here comes a brand new one. There comes another brand new one. They're finding new plants, new insects, new animals. They're not telling you. It's not just where things go extinct. Their time comes to an end, and then the next thing comes. And it doesn't evolve. There's no missing link. It just comes. Because what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, if you're talking a chicken, the egg came first, because what laid that egg was not a chicken. People decided they wanted, or the Earth decided she wanted chickens. So that thing that laid the egg was a chicken egg, but it wasn't a chicken that laid it, because the energy structure at that time was saying, we need chickens. So we got chickens. We had literally billions of chickens roaming the West. There were free-range chickens, herds and herds of chickens. I'm just kidding, because we go story by free range. I'm like, there were millions thundering across the plains, free-range chickens. It's like, buffalo, yes. Chickens, no.
What was that scientist's name that did the experiment with?
Louis T. Montagnier.
How do we, Lewis? Okay, L-E-W. And then what's his last name, please, Gene? How do you spell?
Yeah, hold on just a second. I'm not good. I'll put it in I'll find it here. Hold on. I've got it fairly well.
And nice and slow for me when you read it back, so I can type it out. Thank you.
Yeah, he actually is usually called Luc, L-U-C. I'm sorry, no Louis, Luc. French
Okay,
Luc. A joint recipient of the Nobel Prize on Physiology of medicine 2008. So LUC is Luke is the first name. Montagnier is MON like TA, like almost like Montana. And then GNIER, Louis T. Montagnier.
Luc Montagnier, okay.
He died in 2022 at 89 years old.
Okay. Very cool.
I'm looking at the inside. I don't like Wikipedia much. I'm looking at Encyclopedia Britannica here.
Okay.
He is the one that was given the Nobel Prize for discovering HIV.
Ah, okay.
Not like
great.
They just directed him, probably. Not like he didn't know it was there.
Yeah. But he's able to create life through silicon, water, and I guess, oxygen.
So I actually had the last name pretty darn close the way I entered it.
So that was silicon, so sand, water, and then through vibration and light, he was able to create life.
Yep.
Wow.
Seeing if I can find the actual experiment for you.
And when you're talking as well about those great buildings in Madrid, they've also got that big one in Barcelona as well, the Catedral, is it? I can't think of the name, and it's like this huge Gothic kind of candlestick that's been there for years. It's still being built. I've seen it. I've been by it. I can't remember the name of it now.
Yeah, there's quite a few of those giant things like that. Madrid has one too. London, also Liverpool. Is there one in Liverpool? Somewhere like that.
Maybe. They've got the Liver building at the docks, but yeah, it could well be. Yeah. So the thing of create. So that's
there he's transmitting in that experience. He transmitted one species in a vial to a vial with nothing in it by sound. He was using sound to transmit and the life in one to a vat of water in another. They did the similar thing. They took a salamander egg and a frog egg, and they radiated the frog egg with sound and light, and it bombarded the salamander. When the salamander egg hatched, it was a frog.
Huh. So it's a bit like Jurassic Park, able to create and just be like, boom, give it the God spark. So it's almost like the kind of diagram I'm seeing in my head of this. It's like, okay, we've got here the Earth where we can create things. We do a certain few things like light and sound.
Yeah.
Few elements, and then it's like we're able to draw light from beyond the veil. Draw life from beyond the veil and incept it into whatever we've chosen it to house. Whatever vessel we've kind of created.
And, I think they may have gotten rid of him because he was one that said that the thing we just had sweep across the earth that people are getting today ridiculously was created in a lab. It had to be. He actually said that. And of course, during the time he said that was when it was rampant across the earth and they're making billions of dollars. They didn't appreciate that much at all.
Yeah.
So his team actually combined, together to prove that was true.
Wow. We're coming up to Christmas, obviously, Gene, and I'm wondering if we could maybe go into the science and the physics of Christ, of Jesus, of this time. I know it might not be the original time. I'm not really kind of too worried about that per se. Everyone's
not worried about it because God knows what's on our heart and our mind.
Exactly.
And what we have been practicing for an extremely long time to set the energy of whenever it did happen into this time now.
Exactly.
And so it's this time now. It's a little bit different in Europe in certain places, a different day slightly, but we recognize the birth of God's only begotten Son and all of these things at certain times and the death at certain times. And that has now solidified it in that time of the year. So it's for me a sacred time of the time of the one and only God's only begotten Son coming into physicality of human flesh through the Word that became the light inside Mary's womb and became Christ. So, that is how he was created. And it's we recognize that during this time. This is the time of Jesus Christ. So, he was here before he was corporeal from the beginning of time. As the Bible said, when the creation started, Christ was there. And when the creation will be ended, Christ will be there. So people haven't really figured out, when he's not corporeal, what is he? And what was he still while he was corporeal, whilst, as the great Gonzo would say, and at the same time, what was he? So I've already talked about that subtly during our interview today. So we did a prior to the prayer that we did for freedom for the entire world, the envisioning prayer.
Yes.
I went on each of the 17 platforms, and I wish the world that would be participating to set the energy for this time so that prayer could come to its power during this most sacred time of the year. I set holiday blessings through each of the 17 platforms that we recognized on November 17th at Prayer for Freedom for the entire world. Tom, Dr. Northrop, Dr. Merritt, Colonel Bossy, Patriot Underground, Conservative Patriot Nation, the Venus Twins. We had a total of 17 hosts on November 17th of 2023.
Anna in Brazil was on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You add up the digits of the 11th month of the 17th day of the 2023, you get 17. It just so happened we wound up, I didn't plan it, 17 languages. And we have more females in BFS, women in BFS than 17, but one couldn't get in, others couldn't make it. So we had 17 read their prayers during the time. So there were many, many 17s that happened during that time. It was a very sacred thing that was done. And I want to thank you again, Tom, for being part of that. You were the last one to come on board, and somebody couldn't do it, and they have to physically be there. So their energy has to be there at that time. And you got very little notice, time to prepare, time to get your prayer done. You got everything done in just a few, like 2 or 3, I think it was 3 days. You had everything done from the time I contacted you, 3 days. It was absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much, Tom, for being part of that and for jumping so quickly and doing that. And your prayer and showing the numbers that are involved in this freedom prayer were very, very powerful. So I really want to again tell you thank you so very much, and God bless you, Tom. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Gene. It was a privilege to be asked, and I really enjoyed it. It was like, just go ahead, do it, so it was lovely. It was wonderful, and now I'm remembering and connecting the thoughts and feelings of that occasion into now, because you focused it on this time, and it was wonderful, and I think it will continue to echo in a positive way forward. Well, I know it will. So positive 115, which is 11/5, November 5th again. It always pops up. But yes, this time of year, and you talked about the energy. Energy is 74. Gematria is 74. But the word Jesus is 74. And Jesus Christ in numbers is 151. So it's a palindrome. It's a reflective number, which makes it adds that extra kind of potency. We did the Belt of Orion and Chamber of Kings 131, John F. Kennedy 131. My name, Tom Bushnell, 141. Looking Glass 141. Reincarnation 141. But Jesus Christ 151. There's a nice connection with Diana. I've mentioned her a few times, but Lady Diana Spencer's 151. The 151 is also the Jasara reset. So I know people get hung up on that, but I think there's an intention, a good intention with that within the movement. So I like to mention that 151. But yeah, Jesus Christ 151. So it's a very potent and powerful number. You got the 15 at the beginning, the 15. If you spell the word 15, it comes to 65, which comes to music. We mentioned it comes to 7, and you've got that with the 7, which is Christ 77. And then if you do the 51 is 3/17, the QQQ. You mentioned if you do the 7 times 17, that's 119. You mentioned Mary. Mary's 57. So Jesus was born of Mary. Mary is 57. Joseph is 73, which is Egypt. It's interesting that the whole thing of Joseph in Egypt, the Technicolor Dreamcoat, the rainbow, the pure colors. But Joseph is 73. Egypt is 73. Copper 73. Number is 73. Children 73. Important names 48 plus 25. That comes to 73. But yeah, the 151, Jesus Christ, and 74, gematria, energy, and then Christ is 77, which is power, which is hertz. And I've seen, you might know more on this, Gene, but I've seen, if it's correct, the labeling of it, but I saw a while ago a photograph of Dealey Plaza, the events of JFK, and it had on the top of the book depository, it had the advertisement brand name, Hertz. And I've always thought that's interesting. So I think there was a divine component on that day. In fact, I know there was, but Hertz. So I don't know if it's the car rental company or another brand out there, but nevertheless, Hertz is 77, which is Christ, which is power, quasar, and it's matter. So talking about materializing and matter, the God spark, the Christ element, and materializing, but matter is 77. The word vibrate is 77. So with frequency, with vibration, with light, with sound, all of those great building blocks of the universe, matter is 77, Christ is 77, vibrate is 77, power is 77. My favorite fruit, cherry, it's delicious. That's 77 as well. But yeah, it's amazing how everything is built up of all these blocks. And I love the analogy of when you brought up that gentleman, the scientist, and how with a few elements, a few basic ingredients, but doing it in the correct way, light and sound, you're able to create life, or life enters the room effectively. It comes from here and it deposits itself and manifests here, which I think is wonderful. Actually, you know what? The word manifest, I forgot to say, it's also 77, which is Christ. Manifesting is 117, which is Rushmore, and also Fifth Avenue, where Trump Tower is. Trump Tower is 169, the Great Awakening. Elizabeth Tower for Big Ben, the whole thing with Westminster again. But yeah, manifest is 77, vibrate is 77, Christ is 77, power is 77, hertz is 77. So I think there's a clue there. The whole thing of vibration, frequency with the hertz, matter, manifest, they're all 77. Christ is 77. So yeah, we're able to manifest and create the things that we desire. Yeah, create the good, bring the Christ element into our lives and create the world and future that we all wish for.
Yeah. So to go back, I found something on Scotland that's really interesting since you're there in that area. They found a gravestone that they believe, her body lays in that abbey, but they also said that, it's her gravestone, was what they think is her gravestone, but in the graves under there, the gravestone, which is in County Kerry, south of Tralee, Tralee, It's marked as Scotta's grave, and they found a young boy that they believe is the son of King Arthur, or who was actually had a different name at that time, and Scotta. And the boy's body, the young boy, dates back to the right time frame, carbon dates back. And he was even more special about it, is he was wearing a necklace made of the bluish green faience beads that are identical to the ones that were buried with King Akhenaten. So it's either an incredible coincidence or that's her son's grave.
You say that's in County Kerry, yeah?
Yes.
So that would be the Celtic route. That would be just across the sea in Ireland, County Kerry.
Yeah, they came later from Scotland to Ireland, and that's
Giant's Causeway. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's south of Tralee, where that gravestone is found.
There's a book, I haven't read it. My friend Mark, he mentioned there's I don't know who wrote it, but there's a book apparently connecting ancient Egypt to Ireland.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's your connection. There's a connection for you right there.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, there's several different names they use for the spelling, because originally, of course, it's in hieroglyphics, but besides the MERI and the MERYTA, there's also MERYETATEN and MERITATON. So there's quite a few different spellings of the Queen Meritaten from the 14th century BC of the 18th dynasty of the Egyptian royalty. So really fascinating to learn about her and to research her, and the story of Princess Scotta as well, which they're pretty sure Meritaten became Scotta, which, Meritaten was the third eldest daughter of, I think, of Akhenaten, and she married her half-brother, who is King Tutankhamun, son of Akhenaten, and his second wife, Kia, is so all of this, they always marry within the family. That's how they do.
Yeah,
it's always that way. So
it's very interesting.
King Tut too. So it's interesting that all of this history that's kind of hidden a bit from the average people out there. So, Akhenaten only had a 17-year reign. And so he had 3 daughters that died during the same time. There was a plague at that time, as they said, that's why Akhenaten left. But she was actually fleeing the priesthood that were pretty pissed off, and they reinstalled the monotheist. From the monotheist, they went back to the polytheistic immediately. So you can see that, they were not happy with the way things had been.
Wow. It's interesting you bringing up about Arthur and Merlin. Merlin is 71, which comes to Orion, comes to Pleiadian or Pleiades, whichever way you want to spell those words. They both come to 71. 71 comes to Lady Diana. 71 is obviously the mirror image of 17. 71 plus 17 is 88. That's Edinburgh, that's Scotland, that's Trump. If you do Merlin, so 71 Merlin plus Arthur, or if you just do Merlin and Arthur, comes to 176, comes to November the 5th, comes to Back to the Future again. If you do Merlin the Wizard, I was going to ask you, well, actually, let's have a thought on this. I won't. So talking of Arthur and Merlin, do you see any characters that are with us right now, Gene, that perhaps could be these characters, Arthur and Merlin, in physical form right now as other characters that we're aware of in the world?
Trump springs to mind.
Say that again.
Trump springs to mind.
Exactly. Which one, Merlin or Arthur?
Arthur.
Okay.
And if you look at Merlin, he was part of the Ireland group where Scotland went. After Scotland, she went to Ireland. And Merlin was one of the heads of one, and also, you know, a shaman of the Tuatha De Danann tribe, or the Tuatha, not tribe, but clan, then DE''DANAA, Danann, however you pronounce that. So he was the head of one of the tribe clans. Sorry, I keep doing that. Clans. And, you know, it took 3 months for she landed after Spain in the Azores briefly, and then 3 months to get from Spain, you know, up to the British Isles.
Oh.
And when she got there, people were known as the Milesians to the people there. They changed their names to Milesians instead of, you know, whatever, there were Egyptians or whatever they called themselves at that time. So just fascinating to learn, you know, how this, and at that time you had the Hebrew tribes that's the Bronze Age. They were in the Holy Land at that time, which is the area of Turkey and all of that, which is where they originally started before Christ, and, you know, long before Christ was born. And they came down into, you know, the Galilee area. They were up in Turkey and Iran. And so it's called the Fertile Crescent. They moved out of the Fertile Crescent down into the Gaza area and that. But the people were already there in the Bronze Age, were the Palestinians. They had been there even in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire had 4 different regions that they named Palestinia, or you know, whatever the Latin derivative of, different ways you could say it. They have different ways. And there was the Byzantine Palestine and different ones that they had different parts of the Roman Empire that were Palestinian. And so the Palestinian people have been there since 3000 BC. I mean, that's a long time. It's long before the Hebrew people had migrated over there from the Fertile Crescent and the, you know, Turkey and all of that area, Turkey, Iran, you know, and all of that, what's called the Fertile Crescent, if you look at it. So that would be primarily it's Turkey, Iran, and Iraq. And then they came down, they came down through Syria, Lebanon, into what is now called Gaza and the West Bank, which is all one part of, you know, the same parts that were parts of the 4 different regions, counties, whatever the Romans called them during that time. But originally the Fertile Crescent and the Holy Land, if you look at where the Tigris and the Euphrates, there's an area near a lake. It looks like you have 4 rivers. So it's said that Eden was at the center of 4 rivers that came together. Well, that's that region. Tigris, Euphrates is not in the Gaza or anywhere near Israel. That's nowhere near that. If you look at where the Tigris and Euphrates are, they're not in that part of the world of Africa at all, or the Holy Land, or the Middle East, or any of that. So if you were to look, you look at Tigris, rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, and you go to a map and you pull it up, and you can see that, let me just go ahead and pull it up so I can see it directly. Tigris and Euphrates River confluence. So there's a confluence where it looks like there's 4 rivers coming together, and that is near Basra.
Huh.
Pretty close to Basra. And that's Iraq.
The bushels of currency. The baskets.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So all of that, Baghdad, Iraq, you know, and then you've got the mountain range to the east, northeast, that's going down all the way through, you know, that area from Turkey kind of a barrier. People don't like to go up over a mountain. So it kind of scoots people as they're going to move up into, from Turkey and Iraq and in that area. They're going to go up through Syria and then come down along the Mediterranean Sea into that part of, where Saudi Arabia and now Israel, but it was, of course, Palestine, and Damascus, of course, is Syria, and then Egypt and all of that, which is, the Egypt part of that going over the Suez Canal. Now you're in Africa. So you're looking at this, and then you, of course, have the Red Sea in between that, where now the Houthis are creating all kinds of problems. And the Houthis are Yemen, of course, and their main area they have control in Yemen is Sana'a. And so the U.S., the Secretary of Defense, he's just said that out of the 39 groups that patrol that area, certain countries are coming together for Operation, what's it called? Profit or something, security profit or security something or other. I don't know. It just happened today. I haven't got it memorized yet. Lloyd Austin was talking about. The Eisenhower's over there, and a whole lot of ships are coming together from a whole lot of countries to stop the Houthis from doing what they're doing. So, it's part of what's been going on in that part of the world, because Yemen and Eritrea and Djibouti, that's the entrance into the Red Sea. So you go through that little tiny strait. There's kind of like going into the Mediterranean, kind of like a horn kind of situation coming to go in there. So then you come up the Red Sea, and you have the option with the Suez Canal. That would be going up, into that strait that goes to the Suez Canal. But there's another waterway, which is the Gulf of Aqaba. I don't know Arabic too well, Qelby, or however you pronounce that. And that actually goes up so that a straight line of the border of Israel on the Sinai, however you pronounce it, peninsula with Egypt, would be going straight through the Gaza. And you could come up that waterway, which goes up to a huge set of lakes and things, known as, or seas if you want, called the Dead Sea. And you could come up along that and cut straight along the border there and create what they want to create, called the Ben Gurion Canal. And all of that Gaza and the West Bank is on a huge oil field and gas field of natural gas. So there's a lot of value in that property. And so it's not a surprise the Zionists set up Israel. Yeah, you can use the excuse that's the Holy Land of Jerusalem and Galilee and all that, where Christ was. Yes, that's true at that time, but it's not the original Holy Land. They came down through Lebanon, from Turkey, Iran, and Iraq. So it's not the original Holy Land at all. That's where the Tigris and the Euphrates are, near, that area from Baghdad down to, like I said, down to, I can't remember what I said now, sorry, but it goes all the way down to, you go into the, into the Persian Gulf.
Yeah. Wow. There's oh yeah, so we're talking of Merlin. So Sinai, if I do this right, actually this is a nice
Basra. Sorry, it was Basra. I said it was Basra. So the Tigris and Euphrates, confluence is above northwest of Basra. It comes together there, near Al Swab, and above that and below Al Awa and Al Hawar. It's a triangle that forms there, and you got the Tigris, which is coming in from the north, and you have the Euphrates coming in from the west. And the Tigris at that time is huge. I mean, it's a huge river. And then you've got another tributary kind of thing coming in And so it looks like you're at the confluence of four rivers. And so, if you read the Bible, it's, originally Eden. If you look at where they said it is, it's saying that it's the confluence of four rivers. And it looks like if you're in that area, you're in the confluence of four rivers.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Which, interesting enough, takes us back to the pyramid. We had the pyramid too. So it's interesting now, everything ties to everything else. It's, my head does numbers too, just a little different. I do physics, math, calculus, and algebra in my head. So, and differential equations and, all of that stuff and integral calculus in my head. It's pretty easy for me. I stumbled on Vedic math when I was doing calculus, and the teacher was like, I don't know what my tutor was like, I don't know what you're doing. It's really quick though. It's like you can do it in your head, an integral problem in your head 2.5 seconds compared to takes your TI-89 like a long time to crunch out the answer, longer than that. So it's eloquent, whatever it is, but I've never seen it before. And I have no idea what it is. So I just stumbled on it. And then later on, when I kept studying and researching it, I found it was Vedic math. And there's also Vedic geometry, Vedic trigonometry. Originally, the man that meditated got those. The Cabal took all but 2 of the books, so there's only the Vedic math and the Vedic geometry left anymore that the masses can get a hold of. Kind of like the Bible, they take all the good stuff. Same thing. Nothing changes; they're the same.
Yeah, they go for the good stuff. Vedic math. Okay. Vedic math. I've heard the word Vedic. I don't even really know what Vedic means.
I don't know the meaning of the word. I can get it for you. Let me go here. Got a search engine open. I'll go to Bing. I like Bing because it's not so Cabal controlled.
Yeah. Vedic.
It's a Hindi word relating to the Vedas.
That's
yeah. What it means.
So Vedic, is that right? Vedic.
So Vedic religion, the Vedic religion are the ones that are related to the Vedas.
Okay.
And interesting enough, that takes us to India and the region of present-day Iran, where we're talking the Holy Land again.
Yeah. Yeah. Vedic math. Talking of Trump being Arthur, so I was looking at that. I was looking at both of them, and if you do Trump, or if you just do Patriot Trump, sorry, where am I? Sorry, if you do Arthur Patriot, Arthur's 86 pyramid, Highlander. But if you do Arthur Patriot's 99 Ascension, that comes to 185 Donald John Trump, which comes to Book of Revelation. If you do Merlin the Wizard, that comes to 185 Donald John Trump. If you do Arthur was Trump, or maybe I should say Trump was Arthur, be the same. That's 217. That's Mission Impossible, Houses of Parliament, Lady Diana, Francis Spencer, Tom Sidney Bushnell, 217. We talked about that before. But if you do this, if you do King Arthur, or if you do Trump was King Arthur, it comes to 258, which comes to Gift of the Holy Ghost, which comes to President Donald J. Trump. So you might be onto something there, Gene. Trump was King Arthur. 258 is President Donald J. Trump. Yeah. Could well be. There's a nice piece
about Tartaria before. It's interesting. I'm looking at this, and there, the Indus Valley region and the Iran Indus Valley civilization. that was the Vedic civilization that, wrote the Vedas in Hindi. And the other two primary groups at that time were Tartarian and Nagamic.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Vedas,
Huh.
you're looking at the early Upanishads and those type of writings. But at that time, you had two other primary cultures, the Agamic and the Tartarian. So it's interesting that we see these things again. We have a sacred number 3 tying together to, and so the Tartarian people are coming down through Pakistan area, and the Kalesh people, probably from the area of Kalesh and all of that, if people know what I'm referring to there. And the religions at that time, was Brahmanism. Brahma is believed by them to be the one and only God. He breathed out creation. He breathed it out in a word, and the word was Om, A-U-M, or Adam, or Adam, or, all of the various, depending on what language you're used to hearing it, it'll sound a certain way to you. So, and you'll say it a certain way. So it's very, very, people think that Hinduism is polytheistic, but it's based a series of demigods below the one and only God of all creation, which is Brahma. And they were practicing Brahmanism with a series of demigods underneath. And, kind of because at the time you had all these non-terrestrial beings playing like they're gods, and they said, you're not gods, maybe you're demigods, kind of semi-gods, right? You're not really gods, you're flesh and blood, but we'll give you some honors and call you semi-gods, but not to be derogatory, we'll call you demigods, little demonics, demigods.
Demi, yeah. We'll give you the title of partial god, but we'll also tell you that you're redeemed. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Demigods. So Tartaria. So the Vedics, and what was the third one that was tied in at that time?
Agamic.
How do you spell that, please, Gene?
T-A-M-I-C. Agami.
Agami.
Agamic.
Agamic, okay. A-G-A-M-I-C. I don't know about Agamic, actually. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I haven't really researched much on that.
Okay.
Let me put that one in. So they just mention it. They're called Tantra. From them comes the Tantra system. Tantra religions.
Okay.
Is a voluminous 28, I don't know if I call that a voluminous, and 64, yes, different ones, and 108. Okay, so they're doing the 3 representations of God in their own, Shiva, Vishnu, and what's the other one? Shiva, Vishnu, is it Shakta or something like that? That Shiva and Vishnu, I think it is, that's the Tandali that destroys the universe at the end of time in that religion. So it's the 3 energy structures of God, in other words, same thing. It's just a different way of seeing it based on a different people at the time. So Gama is a type of Hinduism, a branch of Hinduism where Hinduism came from, the Agamas. So it literally means that what has come down. And I bet you I know where from. That was come down from the stars. Okay, star people again. Here we go. So anyway, that's it. And so it's interesting. We've come around and linked up where we started and threw in a whole bunch of stuff along the trip. So we've been going a little over 2 hours. Probably should wrap it up. So thank you, Tom.
We'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I don't want to roll people's eyes back in their head too much.
Yeah, so we'll wrap it up. As we close, So I'm a fan of the Transformer movies. More of the toys. I grew up with the Transformer toys, and it fascinates me. And the ability to kind of have another species that has a life spark, a God spark. And when you're talking about kind of falling from the stars, so there's a lot of Transformers. One of the episodes is, I think it's called The Last Night, and they start off with it's all melded in with the Arthurian legend. And Optimus Prime, in my opinion, is like a Trump type character, and they descend from the stars and they come and incept on the Earth. But do you have any knowledge or thoughts or opinions on the ability or the reality? I'll pose it this way: the reality of things like Transformers in and amongst us right now, i.e., loving. There's a slip there, but living, and I guess loving, positive alien creatures that could take on the form of, machinery or cars and hide themselves amongst us, but also be kind of guardian protectors. Any truth in that sort of story line?
That's a parallel timeline.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So one thing you were talking about, the spark of life. It's interesting that at the moment of conception, the egg explodes with light. A burst of light comes from the egg. It's at the moment of conception. For me, that's the light of the Holy Spirit coming in.
Yeah.
The Spirit, part of the Spirit that is the child, of the part of the Holy Spirit that is the child coming into the egg at the moment of conception. They've seen it and they try to explain it that it's a silicon, there's a silicon and all this, and it's bursting light out like a diode or something, a light emitting diode or something. It's an organic light emitting diode and all this garbage. Not for me. You can believe that if you want, but that's not where I'm going to go. So wanted to thank you, Tom, for having me back, and it's been a wonderful time. And thank you for being part of the envisioning project that we did on November 17th. And thank you for everything. And everyone out there, have a most beautiful holiday season ever. And God bless.
Thank you, Gene. Maybe we'll get to talk about that alternate Transformer timeline on a future show, because you've caught it's like a cliffhanger now. It's like, hang on, Transformers are real in another timeline. Yeah, maybe we could go into that on another occasion.
Okay. We'll see, Tom. So stay in touch and we'll see.
Thanks, Gene. God bless, and thank you for inviting me onto the project. It was an honor. So Merry Christmas.
I've been allowed to invite people to anything.
What's that?
This is my first, probably my last.
Oh, yeah, it was a lot of work, wasn't it? It was a lot of effort.
God calls me to do, but it was God's calling.
Well, I was thankful and grateful to be involved. So thank you. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for being part of it, and have a wonderful holiday season, Tom.
Thanks a lot, Gene. Thanks for your time. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.